Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and looked around the huge room filled with alien creatures. The Galactic Council station stretched out like a giant wheel in space, and this main chamber was its heart. Hundreds of different species sat in their special seats, each one designed for their weird body shapes. Some had tentacles, others had 4 arms, and a few looked like walking rocks with eyes. Jake had been coming to these meetings for 3 years now. Every single time it was the same story. The humans would ask for something reasonable, and the aliens would say no. Today was supposed to be different. Today, humanity was asking for permission to expand into 3 empty star systems in the outer rim. These systems had no life, no other species claiming them, and plenty of resources that Earth desperately needed. Dr. Lisa Carter sat in the observation area above the main floor. She was Earth's top expert on alien life, and she knew these creatures better than almost any other human. Right now, she was watching the Zephyrian delegates speak. The Zephyrians looked like tall, blue-skinned humans with extra arms. Their delegate, Kexenal, was waving all 4 of his hands as he talked. "The human request is premature," Kexenal said in his boring voice. "Humanity has only been part of this council for 50 Earth years. That is nothing compared to our thousands of years of experience. We cannot simply hand over entire star systems to such a young species." Lisa felt her hands make fists. 50 years was not a short time. In those 50 years, humans had helped solve major problems for dozens of alien species. They had shared their technology, their medicine, and their knowledge freely. But somehow, it was never enough for these creatures. Captain Ryan Hughes floated in the command center of the EDS Horizon, one of Earth's newest warships. The ship was orbiting the Council station, and Ryan was watching the meeting through a live video feed. His crew was mostly human, but they had a few alien friends working with them. Even those aliens were getting angry at what they were hearing. "Sir," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks, his second in command, "the crew is not happy about this. We all know those outer rim systems are empty. What's the real reason they won't let us have them?" Ryan knew the answer, but saying it out loud would sound paranoid. The truth was that the older alien species were scared of humans. In just 50 years, humanity had gone from barely knowing about space travel to building some of the fastest ships in the galaxy. Human scientists were making discoveries that alien researchers had been trying to figure out for centuries. Human doctors were curing diseases that had killed millions of aliens for thousands of years. The Veltar Empire controlled most of the Council's decisions. They were the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy, and they had been in charge for over 10,000 years. Their emperor rarely came to these meetings, but his representatives always made sure that humanity stayed in its place. Today, the main Veltar speaker was Chancellor Vextar. He was a tall, thin creature with gray skin and eyes that glowed like fire. When he stood up to speak, the entire room went quiet. Even the other alien delegates were afraid of him. "Humanity continues to show the same impulsive behavior that marks all primitive species," Vextar said. His voice was calm, but there was something cruel in it. "They want everything now, without understanding the careful balance that keeps our galaxy peaceful. Perhaps in another 100 years, when they have learned patience, we can discuss this again." Jake felt something snap inside his chest. He had been diplomatic for 3 years. He had smiled when aliens insulted his species. He had stayed calm when they treated humans like children. But hearing his entire race called primitive was too much. The Aqualan delegate spoke next. The Aquilans looked like giant sea creatures with tentacles instead of arms. Their representative, Kermish, made a sound that the translation computers turned into laughter. "The humans should be grateful for what they already have," Kermish said. 3 star systems is more than most species get when they first join our council. Maybe they should focus on managing what they have instead of always wanting more. Dr. Lisa Carter stood up in the observation area. She could not stay quiet anymore. "May I remind the Council that humanity has contributed more scientific advances in the past decade than some species have in their entire membership." Several alien delegates made angry noises. Humans were not supposed to speak from the observation area. That was another rule designed to keep them quiet and small. Chancellor Vextar turned his glowing eyes toward Lisa. This outburst proves our point exactly. Humans are too emotional to be trusted with important decisions. Your species needs guidance, not independence. Captain Ryan Hughes watched his communication screen light up with messages from other human ships. Every captain in the fleet was asking the same question. How much more of this were they supposed to take? Ryan had fought beside many of these alien species during the border wars 5 years ago. He had seen human soldiers die protecting alien colonies, but apparently that meant nothing to the Council. Ambassador Jake Morrison looked around the chamber one more time. He saw the same faces that had been dismissing humanity for years. The Zephyrians who thought humans were too young. The Veltar who thought humans were too primitive. The Aquilans who thought humans should be grateful for scraps. He thought about Earth, spinning blue and beautiful in space billions of miles away. He thought about the human colonies on Mars and Europa, where people were working hard to build better lives. He thought about the human scientists who stayed up all night trying to solve problems that would help everyone in the galaxy. He thought about the human doctors who had saved millions of alien lives with their medical discoveries, all of that work, all of that sacrifice, and these creatures still saw humans as nothing more than annoying children. Jake Morrison stood up. Slowly, the entire chamber became quiet. Even the constant humming of the station's machinery seemed to stop. "I have an announcement to make," Jake said in a clear, strong voice. After careful consideration, humanity has decided to withdraw from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Then, all at once, hundreds of alien voices began shouting in dozens of different languages. The translation computers could not keep up with all the noise. Chancellor Vextar raised one of his long arms. "Ambassador Morrison, surely you are not serious. Your species cannot survive without the Council's protection and guidance." Jake picked up his briefcase and walked toward the exit. At the door, he turned back to face the chamber full of shocked aliens. "We're about to find out," he said, and walked out of the Galactic Council forever. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the EDS Liberty and watched the biggest fleet movement in human history. 312 human ships were preparing to leave Council space at the same time. Some were warships like hers, but most were research vessels, trade ships, and colony transports. Every single one was packed with humans who had decided they were done being treated like children. The communication board in front of Kate was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Ship captains from all over the galaxy were asking for orders, reporting their status, or just wanting to talk to someone who understood how they felt. Kate had been in the Earth Defense Fleet for 22 years, and she had never seen anything like this. "Admiral," said Commander Nick Campbell from his position at the navigation station. "The last civilian transport just cleared the stations. Docking bay. All human vessels are ready to depart on your command." Kate looked at the main screen, which showed the Galactic Council station growing smaller as they moved away from it. Somewhere in that station, hundreds of alien delegates were probably still arguing about what had just happened. She wondered if they understood that this was not a negotiation or a threat. This was goodbye. Dr. Henry Walsh was busy supervising the evacuation of the Kepler research station. The station had been a joint project between humans and 12 different alien species. For 15 years, they had worked together on advanced technology that could help everyone in the galaxy. Now, Henry was watching his human team pack up their equipment and research data. "Dr. Walsh," said his assistant, Dr. Rebecca Stone, "the Montari researchers are asking if we can leave copies of our quantum physics research behind." Henry looked at the 3 Montari scientists standing nearby. They looked like giant insects with big, sad eyes. He had worked with them for 8 years, and they had become friends. But friendship was different from politics. "Tell them I'm sorry," Henry said. "But if the Council thinks humans are too primitive to be trusted with 3 empty star systems, then maybe our research is too primitive to be useful." The Montari scientists clicked their mandibles together, which was how they showed disappointment. Henry felt bad about leaving them behind, but he felt worse about the years of being treated like a second-class citizen in his own research station. Commander Ashley Brooks was dealing with an even bigger problem at the Nexus Trade Hub. The hub was like a giant shopping mall in space where dozens of species came to buy and sell goods. Human companies had built most of the best shops and restaurants in the hub. Human engineers maintained the hub's power systems and life support. Human security teams kept everyone safe. Now, Ashley was coordinating the withdrawal of over 2,000 human civilians from the hub. The alien administrators were starting to panic. "Commander Brooks," said Hub Administrator Zelkar, a four-armed creature from the Rigel system, "surely we can work something out. Your people are vital to this station's operation." Ashley looked at the administrator with tired eyes. 3 hours ago, your government voted to keep humanity locked in 3-star systems because we're too young and emotional to be trusted with more responsibility. Now you're telling me we're vital to your operations. Which is it? Zelkar S4. Arms waved nervously. That was politics. This is business. We can separate the two things. No, Ashley said simply. We can't. When you treat people badly in politics, it affects everything else too. The human merchant ships were already loading up with goods and equipment. Ashley watched as the Chun family, who had run the most popular restaurant in the hub for 10 years, packed their belongings onto a transport ship. Their alien customers were begging them to stay, offering more money and better lease terms. But the Chuns had made their decision. Captain Ryan Hughes received new orders while the EDS Horizon was still orbiting the Council Station. He was to escort a group of research vessels to the Tau Ceti system, which was outside of Council space. The journey would take 3 weeks, and they would be traveling through areas where no human had gone before. "Sir," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks, "we're getting communications from the surface. Several council delegates want to speak with our government about reconsidering the withdrawal." Ryan looked at the message queue on his screen. There were dozens of requests for meetings, negotiations, and discussions. Most of them were from the same species that had voted against humanity just a few hours ago. "Send them all the same reply?" Ryan said, "Tell them that Ambassador Morrison spoke for all of humanity when he announced our withdrawal. There's nothing to reconsider." The really interesting messages were coming from species that were not part of the Council. The Hegemony, which was a group of smaller civilizations, had sent 3 different messages asking if humanity would be interested in trade agreements. The free traders, who operated in the outer regions of the galaxy, wanted to know if humans would consider joint exploration missions. Dr. Lisa Carter was on one of the research ships leaving Council space. She was looking through her personal collection of alien cultural data, trying to decide what to do with it. She had spent years learning about dozens of different species, their languages, their customs, and their histories. All of that knowledge was supposed to help humanity build better relationships with other civilizations. "Dr. Carter," said her research partner, Dr. Karen Davis, "I've been thinking about what happens next. Do you think we made the right choice?" Lisa looked out the window at the stars streaming past their ship. "Karen, I've been studying alien cultures for 15 years. I've learned that respect is the foundation of every successful relationship. If someone doesn't respect you, then nothing else matters. The Council never respected us, and they never would have." Back on the Council station, the emergency session was still going on. Chancellor Vexstar was trying to convince the other delegates that humanity's withdrawal was actually a good thing for the galaxy. Without the humans' constant demands for expansion and change, we can return to the stable order that has kept peace in our galaxy for millennia, Vexstar said, but many of the other delegates were not convinced. The hegemony representative, a small, bird-like creature named Kiptar, stood up to speak. "The humans have contributed more to galactic science and medicine in 50 years than some of our member species have contributed in 500 years, Kiptar said. "Maybe the problem is not that they want too much too fast. Maybe the problem is that we give too little too slowly." Several other delegates made sounds of agreement. The Rigelians were worried about their trade stations. The Centaurians were concerned about their joint medical research projects. Even some of the Veltar's own allies were starting to question whether this withdrawal was going to cause more problems than it solved. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the final report at 14:30 ship time. Every human vessel had successfully left Council space. There had been no violence, no threats, no angry speeches. The humans had simply packed up their things and left, like guests leaving a party where they were not welcome. "Admiral," said Commander Campbell, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. President Mills wants to address the fleet." Kate nodded. "Put him through to all ships." President Connor Mills appeared on screens throughout the human fleet. He looked tired but determined. "To all human personnel leaving Council space," Mills said, "I want you to know that Earth stands behind your decision. For too long, we have tried to prove ourselves worthy of respect that should have been given freely. Today, we start a new chapter in human history. We will build our own alliances, explore our own territories, and create our own future. The galaxy is vast, and there is room for civilizations that value freedom, cooperation, and mutual respect." As the President's message ended, Kate looked at her fleet status display. 312 ships, carrying over 50,000 humans, were heading into unknown space. They were leaving behind decades of work, billions of dollars in investments, and relationships with species they had considered friends, but they were also leaving behind the constant humiliation of being treated as inferior, the frustration of having their contributions ignored, and the anger of watching other species benefit from human generosity without giving anything back. Admiral Kate Sullivan looked at the stars ahead and smiled. Whatever happened next, it had to be better than what they were leaving behind. Senator Maria Gonzalez looked at the stack of communication requests on her desk and shook her head in amazement. 6 months ago, she had been just another politician worrying about trade agreements and border disputes. Now she was Earth's Minister of Independent Relations, and every day brought messages from species across the galaxy who wanted to work with humanity. The morning's priority message came from the Kepler Collective, a group of 12 species that live far from Council space. Their leader, Admiral Zixuna, was asking if humanity would be interested in the Mutual Defense Agreement. The afternoon brought a trade proposal from the Outer Rim Mining Guild, who controlled valuable asteroid fields that the Council had never been able to touch. "Minister," said her assistant, Captain Amy Thompson, "we have 17 more requests for technological partnerships, 8 proposals for joint research projects, and 3 species asking if they can establish embassies on Earth." Maria smiled as she looked through the files. These were not the same kinds of requests that humanity used to get. Before the withdrawal, other species would ask humans for help with their problems, offer very little in return, and expect to be grateful for the opportunity to serve. Now everyone was offering fair trades, equal partnerships, and genuine cooperation. The most interesting message came from a species called the Coranti. They were reptilian creatures who lived in the Andromeda Spiral, completely outside of Council influence. Their message was simple: "We have been watching humanity for decades. You are the first Council species to show real honor. We would like to meet." Captain Nick Campbell was having his own interesting experiences in the Tau Ceti system. His ship, the EDS Explorer, was part of the human survey team mapping new territories. What they found was not empty space. Instead, they discovered dozens of small civilizations that had been hiding from the Council for centuries. "Captain," said his science officer, Dr. Rebecca Stone, "I'm reading artificial structures around the 4th planet. It looks like a space station, but the design is completely different from anything in our databases." Nick ordered his ship to approach slowly with all weapons powered down and shields at minimum. The last thing humanity needed was to start their independence by accidentally attacking someone. As they got closer, the alien station sent them a greeting message. "Welcome, humans," said a voice speaking perfect English. "We are the Hegemony Defense Force. We have been waiting for you." It turned out that the hegemony was much larger than anyone had realized. While the Council thought they were just a small group of rebel species, They actually controlled over 40 star systems and had been preparing for war against the Veltar Empire for decades. Their weapons were based on technology that human scientists had shared during joint research projects years ago. Dr. Karen Davis was working in her new laboratory on the human colony world of New Geneva when she made the discovery that would change everything. She had been experimenting with genetic treatments that could extend human lifespans, but her research had an unexpected side effect. The same treatment that could help humans live for 200 years could also work on most other alien species. "This is incredible," said her research partner, Dr. Lisa Carter, who had joined the project after leaving Council Space. "If we can perfect this treatment, we could help billions of creatures across the galaxy live longer, healthier lives." Karen nodded, but she was also thinking about the political implications. Life extension technology was one of the ways that the Veltar Empire maintained control over other species. They would provide the treatment to leaders who obeyed them and withhold it from those who did not. If humans could offer the same technology freely to everyone, it would break one of the Empire's most powerful tools. The effects were already starting to show in Council Space. Admiral Kate Sullivan received intelligence reports that made her both proud and worried. 3 minor Council species had officially withdrawn from the organization, citing humanity's example as inspiration. The Scythic Confederacy, the Rigel Union, and the Free Traders had all announced that they were leaving to form their own alliance. "Admiral," said Commander Ashley Brooks, who had been promoted after her successful evacuation of the Nexus Trade Hub, "our sources in Council Space report that Chancellor Vextar called an emergency meeting of all Veltar governors. They're starting to panic." Kate looked at the intelligence reports spread across her desk. The Nexus Trade Hub was operating at 30% capacity without human businesses and engineers. Several joint research projects had been abandoned because human scientists had been the only ones who understood the advanced mathematics involved. Most importantly, the Hegemony Rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Captain Ryan Hughes was seeing the rebellion firsthand. His ship had been assigned to patrol the border between human space and the expanding conflict zone. Every day brought reports of hegemony forces capturing Veltar colonies, often with help from local populations who were tired of imperial rule. "Sir," said Lieutenant Jennifer Hayes, his new communications officer, "we're receiving a distress call from the Veltar colony at Proxima 7. They're under attack by hegemony forces and requesting assistance." Ryan looked at the message for a long time. 6 months ago, he would have been required to help any council member under attack. Now, humanity was neutral in this conflict. But that did not make the decision easier. "Send a message to both sides," Ryan finally said. "Tell them that any civilians who want to evacuate to neutral space are welcome aboard human ships. Tell them that we will not take sides in their war, but we will protect innocent people." The really shocking news came from Dr. Henry Walsh, who had been working with former Veltar scientists who had defected to human space. These aliens brought information about the Empire's internal problems that no human had ever seen before. "The Veltar home system is having serious civil unrest," Henry reported during a video conference with Earth's leadership. "Younger Veltar are questioning their government's policies for the first time in thousands of years. They're asking why humanity was able to make more scientific progress in 50 years than their empire made in 5 centuries. President Connor Mills listened to these reports with mixed feelings. He was proud that humanity's example was inspiring other species to demand better treatment from their governments. But he was also worried about the growing instability across the galaxy. "Dr. Walsh," Mills said, "what's your assessment of the situation? Are we looking at a complete collapse of the old order?" Henry nodded grimly. "Mr. President, the Galactic Council was like a house built on a foundation of fear and control. When humanity walked away, we took some of the support beams with us. Now the whole structure is starting to fall down." The most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Jake Morrison, who had been enjoying his retirement on Earth, received a personal message from Emperor Velzov himself. The message was brief and formal, but its very existence was shocking. Ambassador Morrison, the message said, the Veltar Empire acknowledges that recent events have created ... complications ... in galactic affairs. We would be interested in discussing possible solutions with human leadership. Perhaps certain misunderstandings could be resolved through dialogue. Jake read the message 3 times before calling President Mills. In all of galactic history, no Veltar Emperor had ever personally contacted a human leader. The fact that Velzoth was reaching out now meant that the Empire was in serious trouble. Senator Maria Gonzalez was in her office late one evening when she received the most important message of her career. It came from a species called the Zephyrini, who lived near the galactic core and had never been involved in council politics. Minister Gonzalez, the message said, we represent 47 independent species who have been watching recent developments with great interest. We believe that humanity's approach to interspecies relations represents a better path forward for galactic civilization. We would like to propose a meeting to discuss the formation of a new kind of galactic organization, one based on equality and voluntary cooperation rather than dominance and fear. Maria stared at the message until the words blurred together. 47 species. That was more than half the number that belonged to the original Galactic Council. If humanity could bring all of these civilizations together into a new alliance, they would not just be independent from the Council. They would be the foundation of something entirely new. She looked out her office window at the lights of New Washington, humanity's diplomatic capital on the moon. 6 months ago, human diplomats had been begging for scraps at the council table. Now, they were being asked to lead a galactic revolution. Maria smiled and started composing her reply to the Zephyrini. The galaxy was about to become a very different place, and humanity was going to help make it happen. President Connor Mills stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the Earth Defense Command Center and looked at the holographic map of the galaxy. Red areas showed regions controlled by the failing Galactic Council. Blue areas marked territories that had joined humanity's growing Free Worlds Alliance. Green zones indicated neutral space or areas in active rebellion. 1 year after the withdrawal, more of the map was blue and green than red. Mr. President, said Admiral Kate Sullivan, pointing to a cluster of star systems near the galactic rim, we've received formal applications for alliance membership from the Scythic Confederacy, the Outer Rim Mining Guild, and something called the United Colonies of Kepler. That brings our total membership to 38 species across 112 star systems. Mills nodded as he studied the display. The Free Worlds Alliance had grown faster than anyone had expected. What started as humanity's angry departure from the Council had become a genuine alternative to the old galactic order. Species were not just leaving the Council anymore. They were actively choosing to join humanity's alliance instead. Dr. Karen Davis was working 8-hour days in her research facility on Europa, but she had never been happier. Her life extension treatment had been successfully tested on volunteers from 12 different species. The results were better than she had dared to hope. Not only could the treatment extend lifespans by centuries, but it also seemed to cure many age-related diseases that had plagued alien civilizations for millennia. Dr. Davis, said her assistant, Dr. Frank Peterson, we're getting requests for the treatment from over 60 different worlds. Even some council species are asking if they can send researchers to study our work. Karen looked at the list of requests and shook her head in amazement. The Mentari, who had been her colleagues at the Kepler Research Station, were offering to share their entire database of biological research in exchange for access to the life extension treatment. The Centaurians wanted to establish a joint medical research facility, where human and alien doctors could work together as equals. Most shocking of all was a message from the Veltar Empire itself. A group of young Veltar scientists were requesting permission to defect to human space so they could participate in the life extension research. In their message, they explained that their government had forbidden them from working with humans, but they believed that this discovery was too important to ignore. Captain Amy Thompson was having her own revelations aboard the EDS Defiant. Her ship was patrolling the border between Alliance space and the shrinking Council territories when they encountered something that changed everything. A massive Veltar battle fleet was retreating from a system that had just declared independence and joined the Alliance. "Captain," said her science officer, Commander Nick Campbell, "I'm reading severe damage to several of their ships. It looks like they've been in a major battle." Amy ordered her ship to intercept the Veltar fleet. She expected to find proud Imperial warriors who would refuse help from humans. Instead, she found a group of exhausted soldiers who had been fighting a losing war for months. The Veltar fleet commander, General Morthak, accepted Amy's offer to provide medical assistance to his wounded crew members. As human doctors worked alongside Veltar medics in the ship's medical bays, Morthak told Amy something that shocked her. "Captain Thompson," the general said, "my people have been fighting rebellions in 17 different systems. Every time we defeat one group of rebels, 2 more groups rise up somewhere else. They all say the same thing: if humans can be independent, why can't they?" Amy realized that humanity's withdrawal had done more than just remove them from council politics. It had given every oppressed species in the galaxy a new idea that they did not have to accept bad treatment from powerful governments. The example of human independence was spreading like a virus through the old Imperial systems. Dr. Lisa Carter was experiencing her own moment of revelation in the archive facility on New Geneva. She had been studying intercepted Veltar communications when she discovered something that explained everything about the Empire's desperate behavior. "This is incredible," she told her research team during their morning briefing. "The Veltar have been using fear and division to control other species. For thousands of years, they convinced everyone that working together was impossible because different species could never truly understand each other. But humanity proved that was wrong." The intercepted messages showed that Veltar leaders were panicking because their entire system of control was collapsing. For millennia, they had prevented other species from forming strong alliances by convincing them that cooperation between different civilizations always failed. When humanity successfully built the Free Worlds Alliance, it destroyed that fundamental lie. Ambassador Jake Morrison came out of retirement when President Mills asked him to handle the most sensitive diplomatic mission in human history. The Galactic Council had requested a formal meeting to discuss possible solutions to current galactic instabilities. Jake knew this was diplomatic language for "please come back and save us from the mess we created." The meeting took place on a neutral space station operated by the Traders Guild. Jake arrived with a small diplomatic team, expecting to face the same arrogant aliens who had dismissed humanity a year earlier. Instead, he found a group of frightened leaders who were watching their civilization collapse around them. Chancellor Vexstar, who had once called humans too primitive to be trusted with responsibility, looked exhausted and defeated. "Ambassador Morrison," he said, "perhaps we were hasty cheesy. In our previous assessments of human capabilities, the Council would be willing to offer humanity a permanent seat on the Leadership Committee, with full voting rights on all major decisions." Jake looked at the Veltar Chancellor for a long moment. A year ago, this offer would have been everything humanity wanted. Now it seemed almost insulting. "Chancellor," Jake said quietly, "you're offering us a chance to be junior partners in a failing government, but we've already built something better." The desperation in the room was obvious when the Aquelan delegate, Kermish, offered humanity control of 50 star systems if they would rejoin the Council and help restore order to rebel territories. The Zephyrians promised to share their most advanced technology. Even some Veltar representatives hinted that they might be willing to step down from leadership positions to make room for human administrators. Captain Ryan Hughes was patrolling the Vega system when he received the most important intelligence report of his career. His sources inside Council space reported that 3 more major species were preparing to withdraw from the organization. The Andorian Federation, the Crystal Worlds Alliance, and the Nomad clans were all planning to leave within the next month. "Sir," said Lieutenant Jennifer Hayes, "if those 3 groups leave the Council, it will only have 11 member species left. the Free Worlds Alliance will be nearly 4 times larger. Ryan realized that they were watching the end of an era. The Galactic Council had dominated interstellar politics for over 10,000 years. Now it was crumbling because one species had decided to walk away from a bad situation. Dr. Henry Walsh received a communication that perfectly summarized how much things had changed. A group of Veltar scientists wanted to establish a research station in human space where they could work on projects that their government had forbidden. These were some of the most advanced researchers in the galaxy, and they were asking for permission to defect to a species they had once considered primitive. Dr. Walsh, their message said, we have watched human scientific achievements for the past year with great admiration. Your people have made discoveries in 12 months that our empire has not achieved in 12 centuries. We believe that the future of scientific progress lies with cooperation and freedom, not with control and fear. President Mills called an emergency meeting of the Alliance Leadership Council when the intelligence reports confirmed what everyone suspected. The Galactic Council was not just losing members. It was preparing for complete collapse within the next 6 months. Ladies and gentlemen, Mills told the assembled leaders, we have a choice to make. We can watch the old order fall apart and deal with the chaos that follows, or we can take responsibility for building something better. Senator Maria Gonzalez stood up from her seat at the conference table. Mr. President, we've already started building something better. The question is whether we're ready to take it galaxy-wide. Admiral Kate Sullivan brought up the holographic display showing current galactic political boundaries. The blue areas representing Alliance space now covered nearly 40% of the inhabited galaxy. Independent species and rebel territories controlled another 30%. The red areas showing Council control had shrunk to less than 25% of their original size. The math is simple, Kate said. If current trends continue, the Free Worlds Alliance will be the largest political organization in the galaxy within 18 months. The real question is what we do with that responsibility. Ambassador Jake Morrison looked around the room at the faces of human leaders who had never expected to be making decisions that would affect trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. 1 year ago, he said, we walked out of a meeting because we were. Ambassador Jake Morrison looked out from the observation deck of Freedom Station and watched ships from 67 different species docking at the massive space facility. 2 years after walking out of the Galactic Council, he was now the first director of the Free Worlds Alliance, and the galaxy had become a completely different place. The station itself was a symbol of everything the Alliance represented. Unlike the cold, sterile architecture of the old Council Station, Freedom Station had been designed by architects from dozens of species working together. Human engineering provided the structural framework, Rigelian artists created the beautiful interior spaces, and hegemony technicians installed the most advanced life support systems in the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Carter stood in the Alliance Scientific Council chambers where researchers from 43 different worlds were sharing their latest discoveries. The room buzzed with excitement as teams presented breakthrough technologies that would have taken centuries to develop under the old system of restricted cooperation. Dr. Carter, said Dr. Zixtel, a Mantari scientist who had become one of her closest collaborators, the Joint Medical Research Program has achieved something remarkable. By combining human genetic therapy, Centaurian biological engineering, and Rigelian quantum medicine, we have developed treatments for 17 diseases that were previously considered incurable. Lisa smiled as she looked at the research reports. The Alliance's approach to scientific cooperation was simple: share everything freely, work together as equals, and let the best ideas rise to the top regardless of which species developed them. The results had been beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded a fleet that would have been impossible to imagine 2 years earlier. Human ships flew alongside hegemony destroyers, Rigelian exploration vessels, and outer rim mining ships. Her flagship, the EDS Unity, had been built with technology contributions from 12 different species. Admiral, said Captain Amy Thompson, who now served as Kate's chief of staff. "We have confirmation that the Andorian Federation has formally joined the Alliance. That brings our membership to 74 species controlling over 300 star systems." Kate nodded as she reviewed the membership reports. The Alliance had grown beyond anything the founders had planned. What started as humanity's angry departure from the Council had become the largest voluntary political organization in galactic history. More importantly, it actually worked. The key difference was in how decisions were made. Instead of the Council's system where powerful species dominated weaker ones, the Alliance operated on the principle that every member had an equal voice. Major decisions required consensus, which meant that everyone had to be willing to compromise and work together. Captain Ryan Hughes was leading a joint patrol mission in the former Council territories when he encountered the most surprising development of his career. A Veltar battle fleet had surrendered to his mixed alliance squadron without firing a single shot. The Veltar fleet commander, Admiral Tyresith, came aboard Ryan's ship to personally deliver a message from the Veltar government. "Captain Hughes," the Admiral said, "the Veltar Empire formally requests permission to negotiate a ceasefire with the Free Worlds Alliance. We are prepared to discuss terms for joining your organization." Ryan had to ask the Admiral to repeat the message twice before he believed what he was hearing. The Veltar Empire, which had controlled galactic politics for 10,000 years, was asking to join an alliance that had been created by the species they once considered too primitive to govern themselves. Dr. Karen Davis was working in her laboratory on New Geneva when she received visitors that made her question whether she was dreaming. Emperor Velzoth himself had come to her research facility, along with a delegation of the Empire's top scientists. "Dr. Davis?" the Emperor said in a voice that was nothing like the arrogant tone his representatives had used in the old council meetings. "We have come to ask for your help. Our people are dying from genetic diseases that your life extension treatment could cure. We are prepared to offer our complete technological database in exchange for access to your medical research." Karen looked at the most powerful being in the galaxy standing humbly in her laboratory and realized how completely things had changed. 2 years ago, the Veltar had refused to give humanity 3 empty star systems. Now their emperor was personally begging for human medical assistance. President Connor Mills received the final intelligence report on the old Galactic Council while sitting in his office overlooking the Earth's capital. The report was brief and final. The Council had officially dissolved after its last 7-member species voted to join other organizations or declare independence. "Mr. President," said Senator Maria Gonzalez, who had become his closest advisor, "on galactic affairs, this makes the Free Worlds Alliance the de facto government for over 60% of inhabited space. The remaining independent species are all asking if they can establish formal diplomatic relations with us." Mills looked at the holographic map of the galaxy that now dominated his office wall. Blue areas representing Alliance space covered most of the display. Green areas showed friendly independent territories. The red areas that had once represented the mighty Galactic Council had disappeared entirely. The irony was not lost on him. The species that the Council had dismissed as too young and emotional to be trusted with responsibility was now being asked to provide leadership for most of the galaxy. The humans who had been told they needed guidance were now guiding everyone else. Ambassador Jake Morrison was preparing for the most important diplomatic event in galactic history, the first galaxy-wide peace conference. Representatives from over 100 species would gather on Freedom Station to establish new rules for interstellar relations based on cooperation instead of domination. "Ambassador," said his assistant, Commander Nick Campbell, "we've received confirmation that even the remaining Veltar territories want to send delegates to the conference. Emperor Velzoth has personally requested a private meeting with you to discuss the terms of their potential membership in the Alliance." Jake looked at the conference schedule and shook his head in amazement. 2 years ago, he had been begging the Council for permission to expand into 3 empty star systems. Now he was organizing a conference that would determine the future of galactic civilization. Dr. Henry Walsh stood in the new Galactic Research Institute and watched as scientists from dozens of species worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. Human researchers were teaching Veltar scientists about genetic therapy. Montari biologists were sharing their knowledge with Rigelian engineers. Everyone was learning from everyone else. "Dr. Walsh," said Dr. Rebecca Stone, who now directed the Institute's physics department, "the quantum communication project has achieved a breakthrough. We can now send instantaneous messages between any 2 points in the galaxy. This technology will allow real-time communication between all Alliance worlds." Henry smiled as he thought about the implications. The old council had used slow communication and restricted information flow to maintain control over distant territories. The Alliance's approach was exactly the opposite. The more information that flowed freely between member worlds, the stronger their cooperation became. Captain Jennifer Hayes commanded her own ship now, the Ed's Harmony, which served as a mobile diplomatic platform for resolving disputes between Alliance members. Her crew included humans, Rigelians, former hegemony fighters, and even a few reformed Veltar officers. "Captain," said her communications officer, Lieutenant Frank Peterson, "we're receiving a priority message from Alliance Command. 3 more independent species have requested membership, and the Outer Rim colonies want to establish a permanent embassy on Freedom Station." Jennifer looked at the message queue and laughed. Every day brought new requests for Alliance membership, trade agreements, or diplomatic relations. The organization that started with humanity's angry departure from the Council now had a waiting list of species who wanted to join. The most remarkable transformation had occurred within the former Veltar Empire itself. Young Veltar citizens were leading peaceful protests demanding that their government join the Alliance. They had seen how other species prospered under the Alliance's system of equal cooperation, and they wanted the same opportunities for themselves. Emperor Velzoth's final message to the Alliance leadership was perhaps the most honest statement any Veltar ruler had ever made. "For 10,000 years my people maintained peace through fear and control. We told ourselves that other species needed our guidance because they were too primitive to govern themselves. But you have proven that cooperation built on respect and equality is far more powerful than domination built on fear. We ask humbly to join your alliance and learn from your example." President Mills called a special session of the Alliance Council to vote on the Veltar membership application. The debate was intense, with many species arguing that the Veltar could not be trusted after millennia of oppressive rule. But in the end, the Alliance's founding principles won out. Any species that genuinely committed to equality and cooperation deserved a chance to prove themselves. Ambassador Jake Morrison cast the deciding vote to accept